Cheers, everyone. Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. So, one thing I like about RFK Jr. is that he will go to any venue, talk to anyone, and it doesn't matter if you're far left, far right, establishment, anti establishment. He will show up, sit down, have a conversation, and try to reach that audience to get his message out. And if you're running for president as an underdog, you probably have to say yes to pretty much everything, and that's what he does. And this is something that Trump does as well. He will show up anywhere and have a conversation. He doesn't care who it is. And sometimes I think Trump supporters get annoyed because there are hostile journalists who are there to kneecap him, to selectively edit what he says, to make him look bad. But he still shows up and has that conversation. Unlike Joe Biden, who has to have questions pre-screened to make sure he doesn't encounter any question that could throw him off with his dementia and his general idiocy that predated his dementia. So RFK Jr. sat down with Sean Hannity of Fox News, and of course Sean Hannity is establishment right, a conservative, and he always takes the establishment pro-war line. And RFK Jr. here is attempting to have a rational, complex, and layered discussion, and Sean Hannity will have none of it. He throws out these simplistic barbs and calls Putin evil and does everything except try to understand what RFK Jr. is saying. So I want to play this interview between RFK Jr. and Hannity and break it down and show you what RFK is trying to say and point out some of the dumb things that Hannity says. So let's listen to this interview.
I don't like the fact that America is bearing the brunt and the burden of financing most of the war against Putin in Ukraine. I think we agree on that part. Why isn't Europe, why don't they ever step up and defend their own continent before they ask for U.S. involvement? And why would Joe Biden veto Poland giving Zelensky fighter jets to actually fight to win the war after they were invaded?
So let's start with this point about Europe not doing enough. This is something that DeSantis has said and Trump has said, obviously famously back in 2018 or 19, he's sitting with the Europeans saying, you're not paying enough. We're paying for NATO. You need to give more money. And so Hannity, because he's kind of I want to call him an ass kisser, but he certainly sucks up to Trump and DeSantis. He wants to echo this line about Europeans not doing enough. But the problem is that the Europeans are actually paying more than the United States. So we may pay more for NATO and have given Ukraine more money, but economically, it's the Europeans that are suffering. Germany, France, the UK, their energy prices. They needed Russian gas. That's why Nord Stream was there. They needed that gas, and now it's not there. And we, the United States, blew up Nord Stream and made sure that the Germans could never get this natural gas. So we might be paying more money, but big picture, the Europeans are paying a lot. And in fact, we are selling the Europeans our natural gas at a much higher price than they were getting it from Russia. So I'm not a big fan of how the Europeans are handling this conflict, but I think it's disingenuous to say that the Europeans aren't doing enough. We are the United States. We run NATO. We are the big dog here, and we push Europe to do what we want. So we're in charge, not the Europeans. Oh, and the last thing too, the jets, the F-16s, the reason we don't want Poland to have these, to give these jets to Ukraine is that we don't want our F-16s to get shot down by the Russians, which will happen because their S-400 systems, their anti-aircraft systems, are very good, and it's bad optically to see our F-16s get blown out the sky.
Well, the more disturbing thing is that on two occasions, the Russians tried to sign a peace agreement with Zelensky.
Do you trust Putin?
Do I trust Putin? No, but that's not. Listen, I've litigated over 500 lawsuits. All of them end up with, or many of them end up with settlements or one kind or the other. and he never trusts the guy on the other side. You use language art, and you use the design of agreements.
So Ukraine, to appease Putin, who I think is evil, they've already given up Crimea. It was annexed. So what? Now they have to give up the Donbass area.
Ukraine, because of our pushing the Ukraine into the war on two occasions.
We pushed them into it, or did Putin?
Well, let me tell you.
So we did push him into this war. What Hannity will never, ever talk about is 2014, the State Department, Victoria Nuland in Kiev, helping to push this coup of the government to overthrow Yanukovych. He won't talk about that. He won't talk about McCain and Graham in Kiev in 2016, talking to the Ukrainian military saying, we're going to give you weapons and go back to Washington, make your case, make the case against Russia so you guys can go on the offensive. Adam Schiff, Trump impeachment. He said, we are fighting Russia in Ukraine so we don't have to fight them here in the United States. We've been pushing for conflict with Russia for years now. But Hannity, because of who he is, will never acknowledge that, and he wants things to start on, in February of 2022, and he'll ignore the previous 8 years. And RFK Jr. is trying to explain this to him.
Let me answer your question.
Yeah.
In 2019, France, Germany, and Russia all agreed to the Minsk Accords. That year, Zelensky ran for president. He was a comedian. He had no political experience. Why did he win? Because he ran on one issue, signing the Minsk Accords. As soon as he got in there, Victoria Nuland and the White House told him he couldn't do it. Then Putin sends 40,000 troops in. That's not enough to conquer the country. Clearly, he wanted us to come to the negotiation. He wanted somebody to come to the negotiating table. Zelensky came to the negotiating table, signed a new agreement that was the Minsk Accords 2 in 2022, and that would have allowed Donbass to stay, and Lugansk to remain as part of Ukraine. We said, Putin signed it, Zelensky initialed it, and Putin, in good faith, began withdrawing troops from the Ukraine. What happened? We sent Boris Johnson over there to torpedo it, because we don't want peace we want the war with Russia.
So let's go back and go through those claims there to see if they're supported. So 2019, Zelensky was elected. He ran on a peace platform with Russia, and they started working toward that. Zelensky and Putin, they met, they talked. So it is true. He ran on that peace platform. The problem that Zelensky ran into was that when he made any concessions, the hardcore nationalists, the Azov types, the Bandera types, they were very upset. So they would riot when he talked to the Russians and talked to Putin. So we have this article here, 2019, October, Ukraine conflict, anger as Zelensky agrees vote deal in the East. Hundreds of Ukrainians have protested after President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had backed an agreement that would bring elections to territory controlled by Russian-backed separatists. So every time Zelensky would try to work toward this, he was undermined at home by the nationalists, and he was getting tapped on the shoulder by the United States, who did not want peace with Russia. Past this, the Minsk agreements, Merkel admitted that this agreement, which was trying to calm things down, was really meant to buy time for Ukraine to build their army to NATO standards, and that they never had an intention of observing the Minsk agreements and having peace. That was never the intention. It was just to buy time. And as far as the agreement between Zelensky and Putin in February, or actually March of 2022, what Putin is holding up here is an agreement signed between Russia and Ukraine that was negotiated in Turkey late March 2022, just after this conflict started. This was a draft agreement to end hostilities. And what happened? Boris Johnson flew in April 2022 on behalf of the United States and said, Zelensky, don't observe that, keep on fighting. And unfortunately, that is what Zelensky did. And since then, there have been hundreds of thousands of deaths as this war continued. So there was a peace agreement, and we scuttled it. And no one in the mainstream media has claimed that what Putin's holding up here is false or is made up. They simply won't acknowledge it. You will never see this picture on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, this agreement between Russia and Ukraine that could have ended the war back in April of 2022. And when he talks about the withdrawal, Putin removed the troops from around Kiev as part of an act of good faith to show that he wanted to slow down the hostilities and have eventually work toward a ceasefire. But unfortunately, it never happened because we did not want that.
Why are you blaming America's role in this? And look, Putin to me is an evil, murdering dictator thug, and when he leaves this earth, nobody's going to miss him. Let's be honest. However, I think that Europe has a responsibility to protect their continent, and yet it always seems to fall on the United States. Joe Biden has committed all these billions of dollars that we can't afford, and he's not fighting the war to win the war. I don't believe in fighting wars half-assed. If you're going to fight a war, you go in, overwhelming force, you beat them, you get the hell out. That's it, and only if it's provoked. Putin did not need to invade in a sovereign country.
So it's rich hearing Sean Hannity saying that you only invade a country if it's provoked. This is the guy who supported the Iraq War, Afghanistan. Every intervention he has supported that has not been provoked. So to hear him say this, it blows your mind. Our hypocrisy here. Did Putin need to invade Ukraine? Which never happened, but to say that it wasn't provoked is nonsense. And as I just explained, we have done everything to try to start this war between Ukraine and Russia. We've been planning it out. Rand Corporation 2019, destabilizing Russia. How can we do this? We can give weapons to Ukraine to try to draw them into a conflict that could bleed them slowly. That is what we're attempting to do right now, and we've been planning this for a very long time. But the mainstream media and people like Sean Hannity never want to fill you in on these other details. And RFK Jr. is trying valiantly to have a complex discussion and talk about all these little details that Hannity just bulldozes right over because he doesn't want to talk about that. And that is the problem with our foreign policy, and that is the problem with American public opinion. It is so uninformed, and the media, again, will never talk about these other issues that predate the start of the Ukraine war in 2022, everything that happened back to February of 2014, and even earlier, because this has been really something that was planned out, decades ago. We had George Bush in 2008 saying that he wanted to bring Ukraine to NATO, and the current CIA director, William Burns, saying back in 2008, no, if we do this, this is going to start a civil war that potentially Russia could get involved in. And that is exactly what happened. It started a civil war when we helped overthrow the government, and then Russia eventually got involved. So we got exactly what we wanted. We placed our sanctions on Russia. We were hoping to collapse their government to get rid of Putin and then turn Russia into a vassal state of the West. It has failed spectacularly. And not only that, Russia and China are now working together, and we are in a worse position than we were before this conflict started. That's the irony. The neocons, everything they do backfires and fails, yet they keep coming back, saying, listen to us. We know what we're doing here. The last 20, 30 years, bad. Don't pay attention to that. Just, things didn't go quite right, but we had great intentions. We're the good people. We're not murderers and killers. We don't start, useless wars. We're doing things to protect freedom and democracy all across the world because we are good neocons and we love peace and prosperity. And that's what they're telling us here with Ukraine, that somehow this is the good one here, you know. And people, again, still fall for it because they do not get all the information. So I hope RFK continues to go around trying to get this message out because more people need to hear it. And I'm surprised he even got on Fox News to even say this. So I will give credit to Hannity and Fox News, a little credit, just for platforming, as they say, platforming RFK Jr. and his, as the Democrats would describe it, his dangerous positions that might, undermine democracy and destroy our country. So at least they had him on to talk about it. Well, that's it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.